The year was 2310. Humanity had expanded across the stars, building vast colonies on distant planets, and spreading the seed of life across the galaxy. For centuries, the human race had lived in relative peace, working with alien species, negotiating trade, and sharing knowledge. But the universe had always been silent when it came to war, until now. It began with a signal, a strange transmission that emanated from the Silent Realm, an enigmatic sector of the galaxy that had never been explored. The Silent Realm was a place avoided by many. Its vast expanse was cloaked in mystery, its planets and stars shrouded by an unnerving calm. But the transmission that emerged in the dead of space was impossible to ignore. It was a powerful, cryptic message, not in any language known to man, but a chilling vibration that seemed to pierce through the minds of those who heard it. When the message was first intercepted by Earth's advanced listening stations, it was met with confusion. The transmission echoed a pattern that mirrored the rhythms of the human heartbeat, rising and falling in unsettling waves. The experts in the United Earth Alliance couldn't decipher it, but one thing was clear: it wasn't natural. This wasn't a random burst of cosmic radiation or a malfunction. Someone or something was sending it. The authorities scrambled to determine the source, but it was clear that no one had ever encountered anything like it before. What followed was even more disconcerting. A fleet of warships, massive beyond comprehension, emerging from the heart of the Silent Realm. Their design was unlike anything humanity had seen. Shaped in perfect geometric formations, the ships were utterly silent, their presence unsettling, like an apex predator watching its prey. These ships appeared with no warning, and the first humans to encounter them were the outposts on the outer edge of human-controlled space. The warships did not communicate or make demands. They didn't need to. The sheer sight of their arrival was enough to instill terror. A full-scale invasion had begun. The Silent Realm had awakened, and it was now moving toward Earth. Commander Alexis Dragon stood at the helm of the Horizon, one of Earth's most advanced military vessels. As a decorated war hero with countless battle scars, she had faced countless skirmishes, but the current situation was different. Her crew had been among the first to receive the distress signals from the outer colonies. They knew the stakes, and they were fully aware that this could be the beginning of the end. She stared at the holographic map, her fingers tracing the outline of the Silent Realm's borders. "The enemy is fast," she muttered, her voice steady but filled with concern. "Faster than we anticipated." The ships weren't just large, they were incredibly agile, able to slip between stars and planets without making a sound. Lieutenant Cale Hunter, the ship's intelligence officer, stepped up behind her. His normally calm demeanor had shifted, his brow furrowed with a mixture of worry and curiosity. "Commander, we're picking up something else," he said, his voice tense. "There's another signal. It's coming from within the fleet." Alexis glanced over her shoulder. "Another transmission?" "No. It's a signal meant to interact with ours. A call to all of humanity." Cale's eyes darkened as he continued. "They're not just here to invade. They're here to communicate." That was when the message came, broadcasting directly to Earth. The transmission was clear, its tone like an ancient prophecy being read aloud. The words, although in a language entirely alien, held an undeniable clarity. In perfect human comprehension it began. "We are the Silent Ones. We have watched. We have waited. And now the reckoning begins. Your world, your race, will become part of the great eternal silence. You will be our echo." The voice was cold, emotionless, but it sent a wave of terror crashing through Earth's leaders. The Silent Ones had made their intentions clear. They were here to subjugate humanity and add Earth's star system to their cold, silent dominion. It wasn't just an invasion, it was a statement. As the first wave of Silent One ships entered Earth's orbit, their weaponry activated. Entire cities vanished in an instant, disintegrated by weapons so advanced that even Earth's greatest minds couldn't comprehend their mechanisms. The Alliance's fleet, although powerful, was too slow to engage, and the Silent One ships seemed impervious to human weapons. It became apparent that the Silent Ones were not only technologically superior, but their tactics were ancient, honed over countless millennia. Earth's response was swift. A global declaration of war was issued, and humanity's best forces, led by Commander Dragon and her crew, assembled to defend the planet. As Earth's space forces mobilized for the most critical battle of their history, no one knew how long they could withstand the Silent One's relentless advance. The war for humanity's future had begun. But within the chaos of the invasion, something stirred. Something no one had anticipated. A secret humanity had kept buried for centuries, one that could alter the course of the entire war. The aftermath of the initial assault left Earth reeling. In the span of hours, entire cities had been wiped off the map, leaving millions dead and the survivors scattered in a frantic, disorganized state. The Silent Ones moved like shadows, their warships lingering just out of reach, invisible and patient. There was no panic on their end, only an eerie, unsettling silence as they took control, piece by piece, of the human territories. Commander Alexis Dragon and her crew aboard the Horizon had narrowly escaped destruction when the Silent One's forces descended upon Earth's military outposts. They'd witnessed firsthand the unimaginable power of their enemies, but what struck Alexis most was the coldness in the Silent One's approach. No demands. No gestures of war. Just annihilation. Now, in the hushed command center of the Horizon, the crew was left to grapple with an unimaginable new reality. The fleet was regrouping. They had to make a stand, but where? Oh. Commander, Cale began, his voice still strained. We've decoded another part of their transmission. It's not just a message. It's a map. His eyes flicked nervously to the holomap in front of them, where a series of symbols and coordinates flashed ominously. This could lead us to their central command, or whatever is driving them. Alexis raised an eyebrow. Is it a trap? Cale didn't respond immediately, his eyes scanning the coordinates again. It could be. Or it could be the break we need. Alexis thought for a moment, looking over the map that highlighted the Silent Realm's outer fringes, where strange anomalies had been detected. Every human attempt to study this region had been met with failure, but now, it seemed as though the Silent Ones had laid out a breadcrumb trail. We'll need a team, she said, standing up. A small, stealth force to get in and see what this leads to. We can't keep fighting blindly. It might be our only chance, Cale agreed. Meanwhile, deep within the heart of Earth's government, tensions had reached a boiling point. The leaders of the United Earth Alliance had gathered for a global summit, their faces grim. Satellites had shown the Silent Ones establishing fortified positions around Earth's colonies, and the fleet was nowhere near ready to make a counteroffensive. Any hope of defeating their invaders seemed a distant, unreachable dream. General Malcolm Stowe, a grizzled veteran of dozens of interstellar campaigns, was one of the few remaining voices of reason. We cannot fight this war on our own terms. We're facing something more advanced than we can even begin to understand. But we can't just surrender, argued President Eliza Carter, her voice trembling but resolute. We need to fight back. We'll gather every resource we have and... Stowe shook his head. You're not hearing me. We need more than weapons. This is about survival. In the midst of this political chaos, a report came in. An unexpected development. A small group of scientists had uncovered something hidden in the ruins of an old research facility, buried beneath the rubble of what was once a thriving city. They had found remnants of a project, classified decades ago, involving a mysterious technology known only as the Echo Protocol. The Echo Protocol was rumored to be an ancient human experiment, one that had been abandoned due to its unpredictability. No one knew its purpose, but whispers had long circulated about its potential to unlock something hidden deep within human DNA. Something that could challenge the Silent Ones. Back aboard the Horizon, Alexis received the call from Earth Command. The new development was one that had no easy answer. A way to potentially harness the very thing the Silent Ones sought to eliminate. If the Echo Protocol was real, it might hold the key to humanity's defense, or it could be a weapon that, if misused, could destroy everything. I need to see this for myself, Alexis said. We're not waiting for orders. We're going to investigate this Echo Protocol. Cale looked up from his console, his eyes wide. Commander, if this technology is what I think it is, it could change everything. The Silent Ones might have been looking for it too. The thought sent a shiver down Alexis's spine. But as grim as the situation was, she knew this was the path humanity had to take. They were now playing a game of cosmic chess, and the Silent Ones had just made their first move. With the coordinates locked in, Alexis's small team of elite operatives embarked on a high-risk mission to recover what had been hidden for so long. They had no guarantees that they would survive the journey, but one thing was certain. They were humanity's last hope. As their stealth vessel slipped silently through the dark void, Alexis couldn't help but wonder if they were walking straight into a trap, or if this technology could turn the tide of the war. Either way, the Echo Protocol would soon be revealed, one way or another. The stealth vessel, vigilant, cut through the black expanse of space with the precision of a predator on the hunt. Commander Alexis Dragon stood at the helm, her hands gripping the console tightly as the planet-sized shadows of nearby asteroids loomed ever closer. Her team was scattered across the vessel, preparing for whatever lay ahead. The mission was simple in theory: Retrieve the Echo Protocol, the mysterious human technology that could change the course of the war. The reality, however, was far from straightforward. Approaching the coordinates, Cale Hunter, the ship's intelligence officer, announced, his eyes focused on the holomap. The facility should be just beyond the outer ring of this asteroid field. No signs of the Silent One's ships in the vicinity, for now. Alexis didn't respond immediately, her thoughts heavy with the weight of their mission. The Echo Protocol had been buried for a reason. Over 2 centuries ago, humanity had lost control of something far more dangerous than any weapon they had ever created. A power that had been sealed away by the very people who had once thought it could be their salvation. She turned to her team, Lieutenant Tessa Rowe, an expert in covert operations, Dr. Julian Reyes, a scientist and expert in ancient human technologies, and Captain Elena Cortez, a former military strategist who had once trained the best of Earth's elite forces. All of them were as ready as they could be, but Alexis knew this mission carried a risk far greater than any of them could anticipate. Stay sharp, Alexis ordered. This mission isn't just about retrieving a tech, it's about surviving long enough to get it back to Earth. We can't afford to fail. As the Vigilant neared the asteroid field, a strange hum filled the air. It wasn't coming from the ship's systems, it was a sound that seemed to pulse from deep within the field itself. Tessa's eyes narrowed as she scanned the radar. I'm picking up something. It's faint, almost like an echo. An echo? Dr. Reyes asked, turning from the data table. His brow furrowed. That's impossible. No signal should be detectable in this part of the field. We're in a natural dead zone. Cale, leaning over the controls, listened intently. It's not coming from the facility, he said slowly. It's coming from the field itself. The strange hum became a deeper thrum, vibrating through the Vigilant's hull. The ship's systems flickered momentarily, and for a brief, terrifying second, Alexis thought they might be under attack. But the hum didn't feel like an assault. It felt like something was trying to reach them, something ancient and powerful. Could it be the Silent Ones? Tessa asked, her voice tense. Impossible, Cale responded quickly. They don't operate on frequencies like this. Whatever it is, it's human. But why, Alexis wondered, why would humanity's past leave such a trail? The hum was familiar, but it was distant, a memory too old to fully grasp. She shook the thought away. Whatever it is, we don't have time to study it. We're almost there. The Vigilant maneuvered carefully between the asteroids, finally emerging into the heart of the field. The facility was nothing like what Alexis had expected. Instead of the sleek, advanced structure they had anticipated, the facility appeared to be a crumbling ruin. The once towering buildings were now half buried beneath layers of debris, their exteriors scorched as though they had endured centuries of neglect. The Echo Protocol is inside, Dr. Reyes said, his voice full of awe as he gazed at the shattered facility. I can feel it. As the team disembarked from the Vigilant, a sudden gust of wind swept through the desolate landscape, carrying with it a faint trace of the echo. It was more than a sound now. It was an almost tangible presence in the air, like a voice trapped in time, calling them forward. The ground beneath their feet felt unstable as though it, too, was awakening to their presence. We need to move fast, Alexis said, drawing her weapon. The Silent Ones may not be far behind. Inside the ruined facility, the walls were lined with strange markings, symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint light as though they were alive. Dr. Reyes carefully examined the carvings, his fingers tracing over the designs. These markings, they're human, but they're not like anything I've seen before. They're older, far older. These aren't just ancient records, they're a warning. Tessa, ever vigilant, scanned the surroundings. We need to be careful. This place doesn't feel right. As they ventured deeper into the facility, they found what they had come for, an old, reinforced vault buried beneath layers of rubble. The vault door was massive, adorned with more strange symbols, and it hummed softly with an unnatural energy. We're close, Dr. Reyes said, his excitement barely contained. This is it. Just as Reyes reached for the vault's control panel, a loud crack echoed through the facility, and a wave of energy surged outward from the vault. It was the same hum they had heard before, but now it was amplified, an overwhelming force that knocked them off their feet. Get back! Alexis shouted, but it was too late. The energy wasn't just a sound or a vibration, it was alive. It was as if the vault itself had awakened, and it wasn't pleased. The team scrambled to retreat, but before they could reach the exit, a sudden force field slammed down over the facility, trapping them inside. The air grew thick, heavy with an oppressive weight. In the center of the vault, something began to take form, glowing faintly. A shape that resembled a human but impossibly altered, its features shifting like liquid. "We shouldn't have come here," Kale muttered, his voice barely audible. The figure in the vault shimmered as if observing them. And then it spoke, not with words but with a flood of images, memories and emotions directly into their minds. The Echo Protocol wasn't just technology. It was something much more profound. It was humanity's final legacy, a consciousness of unimaginable power. And now it was awake. The hum inside the vault intensified, resonating deep within the bones of every member of the team. Alexis could feel the weight of it pressing on her chest, like 1,000 thoughts bombarding her mind at once. The shifting figure in the center of the vault began to take form more clearly, its glowing edges flickering with an eerie radiance. It was a silhouette, but its features were not stable. Instead, it shimmered like liquid metal as if the very essence of it was in constant flux. There was something unsettlingly human about its shape, yet its presence seemed to defy all logic. Dr. Reyes staggered to his feet, his eyes wide with awe and fear. "It's not just an artifact, it's alive," he whispered. This is what the Echo Protocol was meant to be. A living entity, a consciousness preserved through time. Alexis felt the force field pressing on her, but it wasn't just physical. The energy in the air was suffocating, wrapping around them like an invisible shackle. Her heart raced as she realized what was happening. The protocol wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something far more dangerous. The Silent Ones hadn't just been trying to subjugate humanity, they had been hunting for this. Is it trying to communicate with us?" Tessa asked, her voice strained as she took a cautious step forward. The shimmering figure rippled, and suddenly the thoughts in their minds became sharper, clearer. Alexis gasped as images flooded her consciousness. Ancient cities, far older than humanity's known history. Ruins on a desolate world that wasn't Earth. A cosmic conflict between two ancient races, one of which was unmistakably human, the other something far more terrifying. Then a voice, or rather a series of voices, surged within them, too overwhelming to ignore. It wasn't speech. It was a direct transmission of emotions, images and knowledge that took form in their minds. "We were the first. We were the foundation. You are the heirs to our legacy, the last remnants of the architects." The words rattled through Alexis's mind like an earthquake. The architects. They were human? The confusion was almost unbearable. Dr. Reyes was the first to break the silence, his voice trembling. The architects. They built the foundations of all known civilization. The Silent Ones were their enemies. The ones who hunted them to the edge of extinction. They thought they destroyed us. His eyes widened as he realized the implications. The Echo Protocol wasn't just meant to store knowledge, it was meant to preserve the last remnant of the architects themselves. Alexis stared at the shifting figure before her. The thing that had once been human, now more like a cosmic entity, seemed to pulse with a strange recognition. And then it spoke again, but not through the minds of the team. This time, it spoke in their native language, its voice resonating with an uncanny, disembodied reverberation. "We slept, hidden, bound by time. But you were always meant to awaken us." The realization hit like a thunderclap. The Echo Protocol was not just an ancient human artifact. It was a consciousness that had been dormant for millennia, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And that moment had come. "We awoke it," Kale said, his voice faint, filled with both awe and dread. "But why? What does it want from us?" The figure flickered again, and this time it gestured toward the vault's sealed inner sanctum. As it did, the field around them pulsed in rhythm with its movements. The team instinctively moved closer, knowing there was something more hidden within the vault, something they still didn't fully understand. Dr. Reyes stepped forward, examining the intricate markings on the walls. This structure, these symbols, they're not just instructions. They're warnings. The protocol wasn't just a last-ditch effort by the architects to preserve themselves. It was a warning to future generations. Alexis's mind raced. The Silent Ones, these enemies of humanity, had not been an alien force, but a faction of what had once been a larger, ancient galactic war. They had once battled the architects, and in their final victory, they believed they had eradicated humanity. But now, Alexis realized humanity had left something behind. Something powerful. The Echo Protocol. "We need to get back to Earth," Alexis said, her voice steady despite the overwhelming fear. "We can't waste any more time. If the Silent Ones have been hunting this for centuries, they know what it is. They'll stop at nothing to get it." Tessa nodded, her eyes alert, scanning their surroundings. "We've triggered something. The Silent Ones will come for it now, and they'll come for us." Dr. Reyes placed his hand on the wall of the vault, and as he did, the energy around them seemed to shift. The figure inside the vault responded, its image warping and reforming, as if preparing to release something. Then a sound, a low hum barely perceptible, began to grow louder, emanating from the vault itself. "Something's happening," Cale said, his voice tight with urgency. "We don't have much time." The walls of the facility trembled as the humming sound grew to a roar. Suddenly, the vault door began to slide open, revealing a hidden chamber bathed in an eerie blue light. Within the chamber was a large, crystalline object, floating above a pedestal. The object hummed with the same strange energy that had resonated throughout the facility. Alexis took a step forward, her breath shallow. This is what they were trying to protect. This is the Echo Protocol. The key to everything. The moment she reached out, the light from the crystal flickered violently. The figure in the vault seemed to recoil, its form distorting as if in pain. A surge of energy rushed through the room, and for the briefest moment, Alexis felt her mind expand, touching something ancient, something vast and incomprehensible. The past, the future, and everything in between. Then the hum stopped. The room fell silent, and a new voice filled their minds, clearer, colder, and far more distant than before. It wasn't the voice of the figure. It wasn't even human. "You have awakened what was never meant to be awakened." The Silent Ones were coming. The war for humanity's survival was no longer a distant threat, it had begun in earnest. And with the Echo Protocol now in their hands, Alexis and her team had unwittingly unleashed the power to change everything. But whether it would save humanity or destroy them all, no one could yet say. The moment the chamber fell silent, the sense of impending doom was palpable. Alexis stood frozen, her hand just inches from the pulsating crystal at the center of the vault. The hum that had reverberated through the air had stopped, but in its place, a deep, foreboding stillness had settled over them. It was as though the very fabric of time itself had been held in suspension, waiting for something to snap into motion. The voice that had spoken in their minds was cold, distant, and yet it carried with it an undeniable authority, one that sent a shiver down Alexis's spine. "You have awakened what was never meant to be awakened." The words echoed in her thoughts, sending ripples of confusion through her mind. What did that mean? What exactly had they triggered? "We need to move," Alexis said, her voice sharp, though her mind was racing. She backed away from the crystal, her instincts telling her that the longer they stayed, the more dangerous their situation became. Dr. Reyes, still frozen in place, stared at the crystal with wide eyes. This wasn't meant to be just a weapon," he murmured. "It's more than that. It's a catalyst, an event." The Silent Ones didn't just want the technology. They wanted to prevent this from happening. Tessa stepped forward cautiously, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "So, we've triggered something they've been trying to stop for centuries. And now they know we have it." As if on cue, a low rumble reverberated through the facility. The walls shook as if reacting to some unseen force. Then an alarm blared to life, its high-pitched sound cutting through the air like a warning. Cale's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Commander, we're not alone anymore. Silent Ones are inbound. Their ships just entered the system. We have a few minutes, but that's it." The reality of their situation hit like a hammer. The Silent Ones, the invaders who had laid waste to humanity's colonies and had been hunting the Echo Protocol for so long, were coming for them. Alexis clenched her fists. "Prepare for extraction. We're leaving now." The team quickly retraced their steps to the Vigilant. The facility's labyrinthine halls seemed to stretch longer with every passing moment, as if the very structure itself was delaying their departure. The walls began to pulse with that same eerie hum, like a living organism trying to trap them inside. With every second, the team grew more desperate to escape. Tessa, who had been leading the way, stopped short at an intersection. Her eyes darted around. "We're being tracked," she said, her voice tight. "I can feel it. They're locking onto our signals." "Get to the ship now," Alexis ordered, her voice calm but firm. As they moved through the crumbling corridors, the tension was suffocating. Every shadow seemed to shift, every corner held the possibility of a Silent One ambush. Alexis's mind raced. What exactly had they unleashed? The figure inside the vault, the cryptic message, and now the alarm. Everything about this mission had felt off from the start. But this was something beyond even the Silent One's destructive power. They reached the Vigilant, but just as they were about to board, the ground trembled again, harder this time. The air crackled with energy and Alexis felt it, a presence, something ancient and malicious, making itself known. The figures in the distance weren't just shadows now. They were more than just soldiers. The Silent Ones had arrived. As the team boarded the Vigilant, Alexis quickly activated the engines, her hands moving with practiced speed. But even as the ship powered up, she knew they were already outmatched. The Silent One's ships were not just war vessels. They were weapons of mass destruction, capable of decimating an entire fleet in seconds. "Commander, we have incoming," Kale reported from his station. "I'm detecting 5 Silent One's warships on an intercept course. We can't outrun them." Alexis's mind was already working at full capacity. They needed more than just speed or firepower. "Is there any chance we can disable their systems?" "I'm attempting a jamming sequence, but it's going to take time," Kale responded, his voice tinged with urgency. "We don't have much of a window before they lock on." "Do what you can," Alexis ordered. "The rest of you prepare for evasive maneuvers." The Vigilant shot forward, diving into the asteroid field. Alexis gritted her teeth as she navigated the narrow spaces between the massive floating rocks. The Silent Ones were relentless, and every second they stayed within the range of their weapons would bring them closer to death. "Brace for impact," Tessa shouted as a laser blast from one of the Silent One's ships streaked across the Vigilant's path, narrowly missing them. The ship shook violently as another blast landed, this time grazing their shields. The warning lights flashed red, and the ship's hull groaned under the strain. "We're losing shields," Kale yelled. "Engines are offline too. We're dead in the water." Alexis's mind raced. They couldn't survive a prolonged engagement. But what if the Echo Protocol, the very catalyst they had awakened, could give them the edge they needed? "Kale," Alexis said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Can you access the protocol's data? Is there any way we can use it to fight back?" "I'm trying, but the data's scrambled." "It's too much for our systems to handle," Kale responded, his voice strained. Alexis turned toward Dr. Reyes, her eyes pleading for an answer. The scientist was already hunched over his console, his fingers moving frantically across the screen. I think I can tap into it," Reyes said, eyes wide with the excitement of discovery. "But it's not going to be easy. It's alive. It's like interfacing with a sentient being, not just software. We'll need to synchronize our systems with its consciousness." "Do it," Alexis commanded, her voice steely. As Reyes began the synchronization, a surge of energy swept through the Vigilant. The ship's systems hummed, then flickered, and a strange sensation flooded the crew's minds. It wasn't like a simple interface. It was as if they were being connected to something ancient and vast, something greater than themselves. Their perception of time warped, as though they were witnessing the rise and fall of entire civilizations in an instant. "Commander," Kale said, his voice trembling. It's working. The ship's systems are aligning with the protocol's energy. We're not just piloting the ship anymore. We're part of it." And with that, the Vigilant surged forward, faster than it had ever moved, powered by a force greater than anything the Silent Ones had ever encountered. But would it be enough? As the Silent One ships closed in, Alexis knew one thing for sure. The fate of humanity now rested on their ability to master the Echo Protocol, or face total annihilation. The Vigilant tore through the asteroid field with a speed and precision that defied everything the crew had ever experienced. The hum of the ship's systems now pulsed in perfect harmony with the energy of the Echo Protocol, and for the first time since they had awoken it, Alexis felt a flicker of hope. The ship was no longer simply a vessel. It was an extension of the very power they had unleashed. They were no longer fighting against the Silent Ones. They were becoming one with the force that had been dormant for so long. "This is impossible," Kale whispered, staring at his console. "The ship's readings, it's like we've become part of the energy. It's alive." Alexis kept her hands steady on the controls, her gaze fixed on the rapidly approaching Silent One's warships. Each of their ships was massive, armed with weapons capable of obliterating anything in their path. Yet as they moved closer, the Silent One's ships began to slow, as if uncertain how to react to this new power. "They're hesitating," Tessa noted, her voice tinged with disbelief. "They know what this is. They can feel it too." Reyes had managed to tap directly into the Echo Protocol's consciousness, and now, its power surged through the Vigilant systems like a torrent of raw energy. The ship's exterior shimmered, glowing with a faint, bluish aura. It was as though the very fabric of the universe was being rewritten around them, bending to the will of something far beyond human comprehension. "They're trying to adapt," Kale said, his eyes scanning the enemy ships. "They're recalibrating their weapons. They know we've accessed something they can't control. Then let's give them something they can't control," Alexis muttered under her breath, her fingers flying over the controls. Without warning, the Vigilant shot forward, not in a straight line, but in a series of rapid, twisting maneuvers that left the Silent One's ships scrambling to follow. The energy from the Echo Protocol amplified their speed and agility beyond any known technology. The Silent One's ships were fast, but not fast enough to keep up with the newly awakened force of the ship. "Shields are up," Kale shouted. "But they're still firing?" A barrage of laser fire erupted from the lead Silent One ship, but it never reached the Vigilant. The ship's newly altered systems redirected the incoming fire with a precision that defied logic. The lasers seemed to split and bend around them, dissipating harmlessly into space as if the Vigilant had become a moving anomaly, something outside the normal bounds of physics. Tessa's voice was sharp. "They're adapting faster than we can outrun them. It's only a matter of time before they start using their full arsenal." Reyes was muttering to himself as he worked furiously at his console, interfacing directly with the Echo Protocol. "I'm seeing something. There's a potential here. The protocol's energy, it's more than just defense. We could turn it against them. If I can integrate the system fully, we could project the energy as a weapon." "Do it," Alexis commanded, her eyes locked on the battle ahead. "Whatever it takes." The Vigilant danced between the incoming fire, each movement a blur of incredible speed and precision. The Silent Ones were relentless, but their efforts seemed futile. Every blast they fired was deflected, and each attempt to lock on failed. It was as if the ship was simply not there, no longer part of this reality. "Reyes?" Alexis shouted over the din of the battle. "What's taking so long?" "I need more time," he called back. "I'm syncing the protocol's energy with the ship's weapons systems. If I push too hard, we could lose control. This is unstable." "We don't have time for unstable," Alexis snapped. "We need to end this. Now." Dr. Reyes hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. "Understood." The room went silent for a heartbeat, and then the Vigilance engines surged with an overwhelming force. Reyes had unlocked something within the protocol, something powerful. The ship's energy output quadrupled, and in an instant, the entire ship seemed to pulse with a brilliant white light. It was as though they had become an avatar of destruction, a beacon of raw, unrestrained power. "Prepare yourselves," Reyes said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I'm linking the protocol directly to the weapons grid. This is going to be big." Without warning, a burst of energy erupted from the Vigilant, a concentrated beam of pure force that shot out like a cosmic spear. It streaked across the vast emptiness of space, faster than light itself, and struck the lead Silent One ship with a force that tore it apart in an instant. The ship disintegrated, its massive hull collapsing inward as the energy disintegrated everything in its path. The other Silent One ships faltered. Their tactical systems scrambled, unable to adapt to the sudden onslaught of power. For a brief moment they hesitated, caught off guard by the scale of the attack. But then they retaliated. Another wave of fire slammed into the Vigilant, but the shields held. The protocol's energy had enhanced not just their speed and agility, but the very integrity of the ship itself. They were more than a match for the Silent Ones now. "One down," Kale shouted. "4 to go." Alexis didn't waste a second. "Keep firing. We can't give them any room to regroup." The Vigilant became an unstoppable force. Every blast they fired, every dodge they made, only fueled the ship's newfound power. With each successive strike, the Silent One's ships were damaged further, their attempts to retaliate growing more desperate. The gap between the two forces had widened. What had once been a battle of survival was now a one-sided slaughter. But the Silent Ones weren't going to give up that easily. As Alexis's team watched, their ship shook once more, but this time, it wasn't just from enemy fire. A low, guttural rumble reverberated through the Vigilant, coming from deep within the ship itself. The ship's systems began to flicker. The interface with the Echo Protocol was beginning to overload. The energy they had tapped into was too great, too unstable. "Reyes, what's happening?" Alexis demanded, her voice tight with concern. "Oh, I'm trying to maintain the connection," Dr. Reyes said, his fingers flying over the controls. "But the protocol's energy isn't meant to be used this way. It's..." The words were cut off as a massive surge of energy erupted from the Vigilant, bursting outward like a shockwave. The last Silent One warship disintegrated in an instant, its once immense frame shattered into 1,000 pieces. The Vigilant was left alone in the vastness of space, surrounded by the wreckage of their enemies. But the silence that followed was deafening. "Did we win?" Tessa asked quietly, her eyes wide with disbelief. Alexis didn't answer immediately. She knew the answer, but the weight of it was almost too much to bear. "Yes," she said finally, her voice weary. "But the war is far from over." And as the team looked out into the empty void, the cold truth hit them. The Silent Ones had been stopped, but what lay ahead was far darker than anything they had faced before. The Echo Protocol was no longer just a key to the future of humanity. It was a power that could either save or destroy them all. And now they had to figure out how to control it before it consumed them. The silence that followed the battle was thick, oppressive. The Vigilant drifted in the debris field of shattered Silent One warships, a lone survivor in the aftermath of the carnage. Alexis stood at the bridge, her eyes locked on the void outside, her mind still processing what had just happened. They had done the impossible. They had destroyed the Silent One's fleet with nothing more than the energy of the Echo Protocol. Yet, in the wake of their victory, there was no sense of relief, only an overwhelming unease. "Commander," Kale's voice broke through the silence, "we've lost all communications. The ship's systems are beginning to fail. I don't think we can hold the connection to the protocol much longer." Alexis turned from the viewport, her jaw tight. The Vigilant's hull was battered, though the shields had held up remarkably well. But the energy they had tapped from the protocol was destabilizing, and every system that had been enhanced by it was now overloading. It felt like the ship itself was fighting to break free from the unnatural force inside it. "Is there a way to isolate the protocol's influence from the ship's systems?" she asked, walking toward Kale's console. "Can we disconnect it before it tears the ship apart?" Kale looked at her, his expression grim. "I'm not sure we can. The protocol's energy is woven into every system. If we try to sever it now, we could lose the ship entirely." Alexis clenched her fists. They had just defeated the Silent Ones, but now they were facing something even worse: the sheer uncontrollable force of the protocol itself. It had granted them incredible power, but at what cost? "Reyes," she called, hoping the scientist had any insight into their rapidly deteriorating situation. Dr. Reyes, who had been working frantically at his station, barely looked up. His face was pale, his hands trembling. "We're running out of time, Commander. The protocol was never meant to be used like this. It's alive in a sense. It's not a tool, it's a sentient force. And we've only just begun to tap into its potential." Alexis's gaze flickered to the viewport again. The debris field outside was an eerie, still testament to their victory. But her instincts told her the war wasn't over. The Silent Ones may have been defeated, but they weren't the only threat out there. "Is there any way to control it?" Alexis asked, her voice tight with desperation. "Anything we can do to stabilize it before it destroys us?" Reyes hesitated, his eyes distant as if contemplating a deep, unfathomable truth. "There might be one way, but it's risky. I can try to interface directly with the protocol again, attempt to form a kind of symbiosis with it. If I can synchronize my neural patterns with the energy, it might allow us to direct the force. But there's a chance I won't be able to come back from it." The room fell silent. The weight of Reyes's words hung in the air, thick with uncertainty. "You'd risk yourself for the ship?" Kale asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Reyes nodded, his expression resolute. "This technology is beyond anything we've ever seen. But it's not just about the ship, it's about the future of humanity. If we let this energy spiral out of control, if it falls into the wrong hands..." Alexis didn't need him to finish the thought. The Silent Ones had been dangerous, but if anyone else got their hands on the Echo Protocol's power, it could mean the end of humanity. And Reyes was right. The ship, the crew, their entire mission, it had all led to this point. They had no choice but to try. "Do it," Alexis said, her voice steady but tinged with the gravity of the moment. "If there's even a chance this will work, we have to take it." Reyes stood at the center of the bridge, surrounded by the team as he prepared himself for the ritualistic synchronization with the protocol. The energy in the air felt heavy, almost oppressive. Alexis could feel it too, a palpable tension that seemed to vibrate through the walls of the Vigilant, through her very bones. "I've never done anything like this before," Reyes said, his voice low as he looked at the crew. "If something goes wrong..." "It won't," Alexis interrupted, her tone firm. "We trust you." Reyes offered a faint smile, but his eyes were clouded with uncertainty. He slowly lowered his hands to the console in front of him, fingers trembling as they made contact with the interface. A low hum echoed through the ship, the energy of the protocol beginning to surge again. For a moment nothing happened. The Vigilant sat in the void, silent and still. Then the ship trembled. The protocol's power surged once more, filling the ship with an almost unbearable intensity. Reyes's body jerked as though it were being pulled by an invisible force. His breath came in ragged gasps as his eyes rolled back, and the glow of the ship's systems flared brighter, reflecting the chaotic energy that surged through the air. Alexis stepped forward, her voice commanding. Reyes, hold on. But the energy was too strong. It was as if the protocol itself was rejecting their attempts to control it, pushing back against Reyes's attempt to interface with it. The screens flickered, and the air seemed to crackle with electricity. The walls of the bridge buckled under the strain as the force of the protocol threatened to tear the ship apart. Suddenly Reyes screamed, his voice echoing through the ship. I can feel it, it's too much. Reyes? Tessa shouted, her eyes wide with fear. You need to stop. We can't. I can't. Reyes's voice was strained, his body shuddering under the energy. It's alive, Alexis. It's trying to take me. The ship lurched again, throwing the crew off balance. The energy inside the ship surged even further, but then, in a moment of terrifying clarity, something shifted. Reyes stopped screaming. The thrumming of the ship's systems grew steady. The flashing lights on the consoles began to stabilize. Alexis took a tentative step forward. Reyes? What happened? The scientist's face was pale, his eyes wide, but there was something different in them now. Something profound. I did it, Reyes said, his voice hoarse. I synchronized with it. A deep hum filled the ship's hull, quieter now but still potent. The protocol's power had been bridled, but only just. It had agreed, or perhaps more accurately, it had accepted Reyes. For now, the force that had nearly consumed them all was under control. But the look in Reyes's eyes told Alexis one unspoken truth. They had crossed a line that could never be undone. We're not safe, Reyes said, a shadow passing over his face. This is only the beginning. Outside the Vigilant, the debris from the Silent One ships drifted like ghostly remnants, but Alexis knew that something much worse was coming. They had defeated the Silent Ones, but now they had awakened a force far more dangerous. One that could rewrite the future for better or worse. As she looked at her crew, the weight of what they had just done pressed heavily upon her. They had unlocked the Echo Protocol's power, but in doing so, they had opened a door that might never be closed again. The real fight, Alexis realized, was only just beginning. And the cost of victory might be higher than they had ever imagined. Get ready, she said, her voice low and resolute. We've got one chance to make this right. Let's make sure it counts. And as the Vigilant drifted in the vast emptiness, the echoes of the protocol's power resonated through the fabric of space itself, signaling the dawn of a new era. One where humanity's survival would depend on its ability to control the very forces it had awoken. But control, Alexis knew, was never guaranteed. The real battle had just begun. The Vigilant hovered in the silence of space, its damaged hull still glowing faintly from the unstable energy of the Echo Protocol. Reyes sat slumped at his station, his face drawn and pale, eyes distant as if he had ventured into the abyss and returned with pieces of knowledge he couldn't fully comprehend. The rest of the crew stood gathered around him, each lost in their own thoughts, but all united by the gravity of the path they had just embarked upon. We've stabilized the protocol, but only temporarily, Reyes spoke, his voice tired, almost hollow. It's still trying to break free. And if we push too hard, too fast, it will consume us, Alexis finished for him. Her gaze swept over her crew, a quiet strength in her eyes. They had come so far, but now they were standing on the edge of a precipice. Can we contain it for good? Cale asked, his brow furrowed. He was the ship's strategist, always calculating risk, but even he couldn't find the answers in the sea of uncertainty they were facing. Reyes didn't answer right away. His fingers hovered over his console, tracing invisible patterns in the air, his mind racing as he tried to reconcile the ancient energy that had been awakened inside him. I don't know, he admitted at last. The Echo Protocol was never meant to be used like this. It's a relic older than anything we can fathom. And it's more than just a weapon, it's a force of nature, an intelligence beyond comprehension. Alexis stepped forward, her voice steady, yet tinged with something darker. We can't just hide from it. If we don't control it, it will control us. There was a long, pregnant pause as the reality of their situation settled in. They weren't dealing with a weapon. They were dealing with an entity, something that transcended the very nature of warfare. And it had chosen them. For better or for worse, humanity's fate was now tied to the Echo Protocol's power. We've been fighting wars for centuries, Cale said, breaking the silence, his tone laced with bitterness. But this is different. We're not just fighting an enemy now. We're fighting the very thing that could redefine our existence. Alexis turned away from the group, her gaze drifting back to the viewport. The debris field from the Silent One fleet was still visible, the remnants of their once immense armada now scattered across the cosmos like broken pieces of a puzzle. It had been a victory. A triumph of human will against an unstoppable force. But now she realized the war was far from over. In fact, it had just begun. We've defeated the Silent Ones, but there are others out there, Alexis said softly, her voice hardening with resolve. And if they learn what we've done, they'll stop at nothing to take control of the protocol. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. There were whispers of other ancient civilizations that had risen and fallen in the shadow of the Echo Protocol, each one destroyed or driven to madness by the very force they sought to control. The knowledge Reyes had uncovered was not a boon. It was a curse. Then we don't give them that chance, Tessa said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. We secure the protocol. We study it. And we use it to defend humanity from anyone who comes after us. But at what cost? Reyes interjected, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. What happens when we realize we can't control it anymore? We could end up becoming the very thing we're fighting against. We have no choice, Alexis said, turning back toward her team, her face set in a hard line. Humanity can't afford to wait. The galaxy is full of dangers, and if we don't act, we'll be just another footnote in the history of the dead civilizations that fell to the protocol. We need to harness its power, before it's too late. The room was heavy with the weight of her words. There was no going back from this. They were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. We need a plan, Cale said, his voice firm with purpose. The protocol might be too unstable to trust entirely. But we've only seen the surface of its potential. If we can find a way to control it, we could be the ones who shape the future, not just survive it. Alexis nodded. She had always known that the hardest part of leadership was not the battles you fought, but the decisions you made. This, she realized, was the true test. They had won the battle against the Silent Ones, but the war wasn't over. The protocol was far more dangerous than they had anticipated, and the universe was filled with enemies who would stop at nothing to take it from them. Reyes, she said, her tone commanding, I need you to start working on a way to fully integrate the protocol with the vigilance systems, but carefully. We need to understand it before we can use it. And we need to keep the other factions from getting wind of it. Reyes nodded weakly but with a renewed focus. I'll do my best. But there's something I've been thinking about. I'm not sure if we can trust it completely. If the protocol is alive, we might be dealing with something that has its own agenda. I know, Alexis said, a flicker of fear crossing her features before she masked it with resolve. But we don't have a choice. We either control it or it controls us. Hours passed as the crew worked tirelessly to secure the ship and begin the painstaking process of studying and understanding the protocol. Reyes continued interfacing with the energy, his mind gradually growing more attuned to its mysterious presence. Alexis remained at the helm, guiding the ship through the barren reaches of space, eyes always scanning for any signs of trouble. The universe outside seemed deceptively quiet, as though it held its breath, waiting for something. And then, as if answering that silent expectation, the ship's sensors blared to life. Commander, Cale called out from his station, his voice tense. You need to see this. Alexis hurried to his side, her heart pounding in her chest. The sensor readings were unlike anything she had seen before. A massive fleet was approaching, emerging from the distant edge of the galaxy. It wasn't the Silent Ones. Who are they? She asked, her voice low. Cale zoomed in on the readout, revealing an armada of unfamiliar ships, sleek and intimidating. Their markings were like nothing the Vigilant had ever encountered. I don't know, Cale said grimly. But they're coming straight for us. Reyes stepped forward, his face pale, his eyes filled with dread. They know. They must know. Alexis turned to face her crew, every muscle in her body tense, her mind racing. She had known this moment was coming. The protocol, the very thing they had unleashed, had drawn attention, and now humanity was no longer just fighting for survival against the Silent Ones. The real war was about to begin. Brace yourselves, Alexis said, her voice steely with determination. We're about to find out just how far we're willing to go to protect the future of humanity. The Vigilant powered up, its weapons humming as the crew prepared for the inevitable battle ahead. But this time they were not simply defending themselves. They were fighting for control of the most dangerous force in the universe, a force that could reshape everything. And as the alien fleet grew ever closer, Alexis knew one thing for certain. Humanity's future hung in the balance, and they would either rise to claim it or be destroyed in the process. The fate of the galaxy was in their hands. And with that, the battle for the Echo Protocol, and the future of mankind, truly began.